So now the Django, I want to talk something in relation to what Django is and how is it being used currently as a web framework. Django is basically a Python specific web framework, okay, that is used for web development and every aspect. Now, for that, right, guys, and at the same time, it is also useful for creating beautiful projects as well. I'll walk you through that project, how we need to do, what we need to do in order to run a simple calculator kind of a program that we have already done in using HTML, CSS, and Python. But at the same time, we are going to talk about the net installation and everything in related to Django today. Now, if you go to the our tech notes, right, there is also a section called as Django notes. Okay, just go ahead, and I want you to read and skim through this in detail. Okay, and what it contains is basically, now let's understand few fundamentals related to Django before we deep dive and understand it. Django was basically developed in the year 2003. Okay, that is when the Django birth was there. It was used for a web framework. Now, there are many things that we need a web framework for in order to develop a full-fledged web application which can run on any clients like a browser, or you can also run them on your mobile phones and other devices. In particularly, Django is a high-level Python web framework. Okay, very particular to a Python as a programming language. Django was developed, and there are a lot of companies that currently use Django. Like some of them might be Instagram uses Django, Mozilla uses Django. Now you might have seen Clubhouse, which uses Bitbucket, very famous. It uses Django because why this Django has become so vast popular, because of its ease of handling lot of traffic on the website. Like for example, 50,000 hits per second. Okay, we are talking about per second. That is the huge data traffic that it can handle, Django. Okay, so and at present, right, if you look at the GitHub star ratings, you find Django to be the number one Python framework. Next comes Flask, and at the same time, Laravel is a framework for PHP. Okay, but Django stands at the very first in terms of Python related web framework, and second in terms of total web frameworks. Okay, then comes Flask, then comes Express.js and all that. But that is the reason even a lot of companies are adopting Django as their framework, because of its a lot of features that it encompasses, along with not only handling the huge traffic but also its inbuilt admin dynamic admin interface, or it can be an ORM which is related to the database, where it has got its own inbuilt SQL like database, where you not a database kind of thing, but which can handle your data through a models and other things, rather than putting a full-fledged relational databases like Postgres or MySQL or Oracle and all that. But now, with that being said, let's understand what Django framework is all about. So Django works in a format or an architectural pattern that it follows is called MVT. There are many architectural patterns that you would have seen, and one is MVC, where you have a model view or controller, or you might be also have seen MVVN, and there is also something called as MTV or MVT sometimes. Now Django follows this architectural pattern called MVT. Now we'll see what MVT is, how is that relevant to you. Now it was, again, just to give you a brief history of what Django is. Django started in the year 2030 by two uh, 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 famous I mean computer programmers who were working at that time at Lawrence journal, which is basically a newspaper who are working at that. Because of the fast movement of the news, they need to handle that data very rigorously. So, because of the use of this Django in the newspaper, where we need to handle a lot of traffic and at the same time the fast movement of information on the web page, because news comes and goes very fast, right? The breaking news has to be updated very fast and need to be handled that traffic as well. Because of that, they started a framework called as Django. And why was this named Django? Because one of this, like Adrian Holovity, yeah, he was the one who named it as Django, because his love for Django Reinhardt, because he was the person who was a guitarist, and this guy was a big fan of this guitarist, and because of this, he named this web framework as a Django framework. Okay, now it is a free and open source framework which is readily available under the license called BSD license, and that is the reason it will allow you to modify, change, or use the. So yeah, I mean, I was at these Django nodes that I was skimming through, and that is the reason. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that is the reason that you have. I mean, the history of Django started in the year 2005, and if you see this graph, right? This was the graph that I was talking about, how Django has given its popularity on GitHub as well. These are the star ratings that have been added on your GitHub. GitHub, it is the most popular version control tool that is available. And the more the stars, it is more popular it is. That is how the take here is. And even Django and then Flask, both are the Python based web frameworks, but Django leads there. And at the same time, Laravel is a PHP based web framework. Okay, that is not the Python based. All right, and then this comes Express.js, which is all about Node.js and Express.js combination, where we see them in MERN stack, mean stack, and all that. Now, what is the architectural pattern we talked about? It is about MVT, which is a model view template. Now, what is a model? Model is all about the data handling, because in Python, right, we create classes in this Django framework. We create classes, and those classes will act as a model to work along with their database. Okay, they help in handling the data, and at the same time, there is also called as view. View is all about the business logic, or a application layer, where you will be able to handle the requests and responses to the client and back to the client, and interact with the server behind the scene. The server can be containing your models or your templates. Now, templates is more about display, how you want to display on your HTML web page. Okay, now if you see the pictorial representation, right, there is a presentation layer which is represented by a template. Okay, that is a presentation layer, and then there is an application layer, which is most of the business logic resides. Okay, that is about the view. Okay, and then there is a model, which is a data access layer, and this model, where part of the web framework, will interact with the database as well as SQLite, and utilizes the ORM to get your data from. This is about the MTV or MVT architectural pattern that we see in the Django framework. And at the same time, Django also provides something called as admin interface. What is an admin interface? You can, as a user or a maintaining of this software or a website, you will be having one super user privilege. Okay, those are the admin privileges, we call it as, and they can maintain lot of things here. One is automate the crude operations, that is create, read, update, delete, all that models that you can do. You can also create the pagination, which is flow of events, flow of information or the content in a page format. And also batch processing, customizing, creating new users, providing the authentication and authorization for a lot of usage inside your website. Okay, all that can be done using this admin interface access. And then how does it work? How does it work? This is the good pictorial representation of how the Django framework works. Okay, Now, whenever a user opens a browser like a Chrome browser, and he clicks on a particular URL, let's say skillzam.com, the moment the user hits on the browser skillzam.com, it will go to a Django web framework or a package, we call it as. It is basically a Django application. And this Django application contains a file called url.py that will resolve the URL, which means, like, for example, the URL might be like this, skillzam.com slash notes slash Django notes.html. Now, once this is hit, then the Django will trace that and resolve this URL to a particular file that is located onto the server using the url.py file. This is a urls.py file. Django receives the URL, checks the urls.py file, and resolves that URL to view a particular view file, which is located at view.py. Again, we'll see that one by one when you hit the uh, 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 program, and then we'll see how that is done and everything. But for now, just understand that this view logic, what will happen, then checks for the relevant models. Okay, relevant models is relevant data that is available, and see the models.py file. And that in terms, if there is a database exists, it interacts with the database. If it does not exist, then it will read from the models that are stored in a inbuilt SQLite kind of a database that is already provided by default in Django. Okay, and then that will be that model data information will be arrived, and business logic is applied, and then the output would be shown on your HTML template onto the screen. Okay, that is where your model view template kind of a logic or architectural pattern that we usually see in Django frameworks. Now you will understand it much better when we take this an example. Okay, now now there is an important concept here. How do we install Django? How do we set up Django? And what are the things that needed? Here are some 8 important points that you need to see how to run and install Django file. Okay, so here are the 8 ones. Until you find this, we will be able to do it one by one. Let's go ahead and do that in your browser. Okay, in Google Chrome. Sorry, Visual Studio Code. So this can be helpful for you guys when you do your project and other details as well, right? Let's see. I'll just increase the font here. Now, the very first step that you see in the Django is to check whether the Python is installed on your computer or not. First, this is the check. So what is the check here? Check whether Python is installed. And how do you do that? Just open your terminal within this. You can open your terminal right at the bottom, or you can open a command prompt. Either one is fine. Here, what you need to do is just type Python hyphen hyphen version. So what it will give you, if the Python is already installed, then it will return you the version number, that is 3.11.1. This is what it confirms that Python is already installed in this computer. So you need to do. And if it is not installed, then what you need to do, you need to go ahead and install the Python using this link here. So here you go ahead and install the Python, the latest version, depending on what operating system you have, either Linux or Mac OS or Windows. Depending on that, I encourage you to install Python first. Okay. Once that is successfully installed, then the very next step is to check whether the package manager, that is PIP is a Python package manager that is used to install many other packages like NumPy, Matplotlib, even Django. So all these Python packages, external packages, can be installed using this PIP, which is package manager, Python package manager. And one interesting fact about installing Python itself is, after the version 3.4, which is now currently, what is the Python we are using? It is 3.11, right? Now 3.12 is released, I guess. So even in 3.12, right, the Python comes with automatic, like what is the current version of the Python that we have? It is 3.112. Okay, that is the, and if you install that, right, automatically this will install PIP. It comes with it. So to in order to install Django, you need Python, and you also need PIP, which is Python Package Manager. You need to be installed. And how do you want to check whether this is installed or not? There is a simple command that you can work, which is PIP version. Okay, just check the version of that, and you will be able to see what version is currently resides on your computer, which is PIP 22.3.1. This is the Python PIP that is installed. How is this installed? It is installed from this Python that I have already installed, Python 3.11.1. Okay, this is the version that Python exists, and a PIP, which is Python Package Manager version, is 22.3.1. Okay, now two things are confirmed. You have passed the two important steps here to in order to install and set up Django, which is, first one is check whether the Python is installed. Second, check whether the PIP, which is the Python Package Manager, is installed. Okay, once this is done, if it is not installed, then I want you to go to PYPI, which is a website that is there, where you need to use and download a particular file and try to install your PIP. Okay, that you can do using this link that is provided here. And once you are done, next is to set up a virtual environment. Now, this is a very important step, guys. Why virtual environment? Because as you know, you have installed Python with a particular version, and then you have also installed Django, suppose. Now, at some point in time, there are other packages that comes up with a different need. They wanted a Python to be minimum 3.11.2, which is not available. So because these external packages have these dependencies on the software Python as well as the Django, there is a need to have a different versions for different applications. So in order to have different versions of different applications, that is not possible to have if you have a single Python version or a Django version being installed. In order to create that feasibility, you need to have a virtual environment created. So every time you create a project, you need to create a virtual environment. And virtual environment will contain all those Python packages and modules that comes along with it. And you can go ahead and install this, okay, virtual environment. And how do you do that virtual environment installation? First is you install Python, then make sure you have PIP Package Manager, and then you need to have a Python virtual environment, and that you can do what? Let's go ahead and do some here. Now, how do you achieve that? The first thing is, make sure on which folder you want to add your virtual environment. Okay, go to that, navigate to that folder. For me, I want to do it in a code folder, which is residing on a desktop. Okay, cd code, and here I have a folder called Django I have created. Inside this Django, I need to create a virtual environment. And once I navigate to the place where I want to create a virtual environment, then I need to type what? A particular command for taking me to a virtual, setting up a virtual environment. And this is the command. What is this? py-m VENV. This is for virtual environment, and then type the virtual environment name. Okay, this is what you need to do. What you need to do, let's say here in the Django folder, I want to create a virtual environment. What I need to do, py-m, then VENV is for virtual environment, and then type the virtual environment name that you want to give. Usually I give what? DEV, which is for development, ENV, which is for environment, and give the number. If you have more than one, right, just give 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. So dev environment 02 that I am creating, this is my virtual environment now. So everything, even my Python package managers, Python, even Django will be installed within this virtual environment. Now I'll hit enter, and this will create what? This will create a virtual environment. Give it some time. It will go ahead and create. So always remember that whenever you create a new project, right, make sure you go ahead and create a virtual environment every time. And every time within the virtual environment, you need to add the Django file. You will install it again, because Django is what, like somewhere around 8 MB or something it will be. Okay. So it is not that heavy in size. So 8 MB of Django web framework, you can go ahead and create it. So now that it is already created, my virtual environment. Now, what is the next step that I need to do? The next step I need to do is go ahead and check for that virtual environment, which will be created where? Inside the Django folder, I have created an environment called devenv02. So open my Visual Studio, go to the Django folder, and here I can see a devenv02 created, and it has got this folder structure. What does it contain? It contains includes, it contains library, it contains scripts, which contains the active and deactive. These are two important files, activate and deactivate. This is for activating my virtual environment and then deactivating the virtual environment. This is how we can do. And then there is this pyvenv config, which is nothing but your configuration file for your Python virtual environment. Okay, so these are the three folders that are created inside the virtual environment, which is created devenv02, that we have created here. Okay, now with that being said, next, what is the steps that we need to do? Once that is created, we need to activate the virtual environment. So next step, the step 4 is to activate the virtual environment. So how do we do the virtual environment activation? We need to run that batch file, which is activate.bat file. So for that, what we need to do, devenv, because this is the folder where Django is the folder where you have created your virtual environment. Now just type dev, which is your environment name, nv02, then backslash, then type scripts, then backslash, then activate dot bat. Why is that I am giving this path? This path is given based on the path where your bat file is stored. Because if you go to dev env02, it contains a scripts folder. Inside the scripts folder resides your activate.bat, which is your batch file. Okay, and that is the path that I have given here. All right, now inside this path, and the moment what I need to do, I just need to hit the enter now. So what it will do, it will activate what? So system cannot find the path. Why it cannot find the path? Have I typed it correct? Yeah, I have typed it incorrectly. I need to type it as scripts instead of script. Yes. Okay. If I enter this, now my virtual environment is activated. How do I identify that? You will always see that within the brackets here. So dev env02 is the virtual environment that is currently active. Okay, because of this activate.bat command. So we have now completed the step 4 of your Django installation, which is activate the virtual environment. So this has activated my virtual environment. And then in order to deactivate it, just type the last deactivate.batch. That is the file you need to run it. But now we will keep it activated, because in order to install the Django web framework, you need to have the virtual environment active. Okay, you need to keep it active. Only then you go ahead and install Django inside it. Now the step 4 is Django installation. This is where we need to install. So what is that needed? We need to be in the virtual environment in order to install Django. And Django can be installed using pip, which is Python package manager. There is a command to it, which is py-pip. We need to install Django. Okay, now here is the command where we have a virtual environment inside this, and now we need to type what? This thing, which is this particular command. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. What is that command? Py, which is for Python, m, and then we need to install what? There need to be installed the Django, which is pip install, then Django. So this is the command: pip install Django inside your virtual environment. Py-m pip install Django. This will install Django within the virtual framework dev-env02. Just hit enter. Okay, this will take a couple of minutes to install. If you can see, the entire Django framework is about 8.1 megabytes, which is almost very small in size compared to the hard disk that we get these days in terms of TB. Okay, so it will take some couple of minutes to install. So just to recapitulate what we have done so far, we have installed for Python in the step 1. Step 2, we have installed, make sure that pip, which is Python package manager, installed in the step 2. And in the step 3, what we need to do, we need to navigate it and start the virtual environment. Okay, make sure you create a virtual environment in the particular folder location. And next is in the step 4, activate the virtual environment. And then in the step 5, you need to install Django inside the virtual environment. So this is what it is doing. So what it says is successfully installed. Now there is some notice here. What it is saying is pip latest version is 23.0.1 is available, but we are currently using 22.3, which is fine. Okay, it doesn't make any difference to us. We are fine with this installation. Now, with that being said, what we need to do, just make sure and go to your folder location and see what has happened here. So this Python Django has been installed. In order to verify that, we can go ahead and say there is again, we can go ahead and say Django hyphen admin. We can go ahead and say version. Okay, this is also fine. This will also validate. So what it is saying Django hyphen admin, then you can verify the version. So version 4.1.7 Django is installed successfully. This is what it returns inside the virtual environment dev-env02. We are just validating whether this has been installed. So as you can see, during the installation, even it says Django 4.1.7 is getting installed, and we can even confirm that using this command called Django hyphen admin. Then you can go ahead and give version of it that will provide 4.1.7, which is absolutely what we wanted. Now let's go ahead and see the next step. Okay, so check Django installed. Again, this is what the step we did, which is step 6. Check whether the Django is installed successfully. If it is not installed successfully, right, it will throw this message, no module named Django. Okay, the moment we type this command, it will say this no module named Django is there. And also we can also verify the Django whether installed using this also. What is that? We can go ahead and do this part as well. Let's say you can go ahead and type py. Py is for opening the Python interpreter. I can go ahead and say import Django. As you know, Django is a package itself, right? So I am just importing it. DGANGO Django. And then what I'm doing, I'm trying to just print what? Django version. Django dot, there is a function called get underscore version in Django, and then just close it, and then this will give me this value as well, which is 4.1.7. So one way to do it is Django hyphen admin. You can check the version and check that whether that version is available, or You can enter the py mode. Py is for Python, okay, in the interactive mode, where you will open this Python 3.11.1, which is there available in your virtual environment, and then import Django package and print the Django dot get version. This is the function that is there inside the Django package, and you will get this version, that is 4.1.7. So this confirms that your virtual network currently has a Django installed successfully. So now let's end this, exit. So we are still in the same virtual environment, which is what we needed. So once we have verified, the next step is to create a Django project. So how do we create a Django project? So now there is a concept in Django which is called as a project and an app. Okay, a project is something, you are creating an Instagram project. Okay, it is a clone of Instagram that you are creating. So that is a bigger project. Now inside that there are apps. Apps is nothing but applications. Like one module is related to the login and logout and authentication. That is one app. The another app is handling the database, backend databases, how you interact with this and maintaining the APIs. Okay, that is again another app. And then there is an app to maintain the flow of comments and flow of the feeds on your front page. Okay, that is again a different app that you can go ahead and create. So in a net, what I want to say is, a project is a bigger picture, whereas a project can contain many small apps or applications within that project. Now what we are trying to create, once the Django is successfully installed, we are trying to create what is called as Django project. Okay, so the Django project need to be created. So inside this Django project, right, so how are we going to create a Django project? This will be created using this command called Django-admin start project and the project name. So this is the command that we can go ahead and give it. All right, so what is that command? Inside this folder we can go ahead and give Django-admin, then start project, and then the project name, that maybe my site. Okay, just I'm giving a project name called my site. So hit enter. So what it will do, it will go ahead and create a project. And how do I verify that? I can go to this folder structure and see. One second. What is that? It is created. Sorry, I need to go to that location and then create. CD dev env. I needed to go to this location, then I would have created it. Anyways, I can go ahead and create to this location CD env02. Okay, then I can go ahead and create inside this folder. So here I'll create the project inside the virtual environment folder that we have created, the EV Django project. Just enter the here. So if I go ahead and see dir, it contains my site created. And if you go here, you have got this folder being created, which is called as my site. And this my site will contain all these files: asgipy, settings.py, urls.py, and wsgi, which is a web server gateway interface, that is py, and then manage.py. Okay, these are all the files that are created within the my site. My site contains another folder called my site, and this contains all these details. Okay, and then there is manage.py. This is very important. This is basically a command line utility that we'll be using very often, manage.py. Now just understand this, what we have created so far. We have created currently a Django project inside the virtual environment that we had created. Okay, so we need to navigate to the file system where we want to store the code, and then run this program called Django-admin start project. Okay, and then you will be able to create those file called my site. So far we have created this step, we have created even the project, and project is my site project that we have created, that is your, and inside that you have seen this for files that I've created, right? And what are those files here? This is a dev environment, and inside that you have this my site created. My site contains another folder called my site. Here you have all these files. Okay, all these files are being created inside this, and you can read about these files. Manage.py is a command line utility that lets you execute the Django project in various ways. And then there is another important thing is settings. Yeah, settings is basically for your configuration of your Django project. And important here is urls.py. This is the file we are going to use very often. URLs is basically a uniform resource locator. That is where your URL tracking or URL, um, uh, again, what we call it as how do you access it, how do you decipher that URL, all that happens during this, inside this file. Okay, URL declarations of the Django project, which is nothing but a table of contents of your Django project. Now, once your project is installed, next is to run the Django project. So what you need to, how do you run the Django project? You can run the Django project using a command called py manage.py, and then you enter run server. Okay, that is what you are going to do. Py manage.py and then server. I was talking about manage.py, right? This is your command line interpreter, that program you need to use in order to run your um, um, what manage.py. So how do you run that? You need to make sure that you are in the same folder location where your manage.py resides. Like for example, if I write dir, I don't find here, then I need to traverse through that file project location, which is my site, and then dir. Here I can contain, see the manage.py. So now I can go ahead and execute py manage.py, and then you can say run server, and then hit enter. So the moment I hit enter, it will run this command, and you can see you have an 18 uninstalled migrations. Now migrations is all related to the database. Currently we are not using anything. Again, we'll come to that later, but this is just a warning. You don't have to worry anything about it. And most important thing is, this is the URL that will be generated. Just copy this URL. Currently your server is up and running. Okay, just copy this URL and type this URL on your browser, hit enter, and what you see now is your Django has installed successfully. Okay, this is the page you want to see in order to verify a lot of things. One is you have verified Python exists. Second, you have verified pip, that is package manager exists. Third, you verified virtual environment is created, and fourth, you have verified inside the virtual environment Django is installed and the project is created, and now it is up and running. So this, once you land at this page, it means your Django project and the Django web framework is up and running, and this is what you need to come at it. So what I want is, there are set of instructions given here. Just follow this, you will be able to execute it perfectly. Okay, no worries about it. Line by line, everything is given. You just need to follow until you land at this page. Okay, makes sense. And now once you are created this project, everything is working fine. Now we'll come back to the project what we are talking about. Control, let me exit this. Okay, so next thing is I want to cd dot dot then I want to deactivate this virtual environment. So how do I do that? The env02 backslash scripts backslash deactivate dot batch. Okay, now you have come out of the virtual environment, and then you can go ahead and exit. Okay, now this will be, if you refresh, it will stop. Okay, now you close it. Now let's go to the actual project that we are talking about. So for that, let me open this browser. I mean, Visual Studio Code. Inside this Visual Studio Code, right, I have already went ahead and created this virtual environment called my Django environment. And this my Django environment has contains a project called Calci app, okay, which is for calculation app. Inside this calculation app, there is, because you have created this Calci app is a project and Calci is a app, okay. Again, you can go ahead and create an app by using again, I have given it an example here. You can go ahead and create a app as well, which is create an app. How do you create an app? You can go ahead and follow the same instruction. It is same, py manage .py start app. You can go ahead and create a app by that name, okay. And now once you have created this app, which is nothing but a folder, inside this folder there are couple of things that you need to observe. One is static file. Create a folder called static. Inside that, create another folder called css and then javascript. And inside this, put your css related code, whatever the css code resides inside this css code. And then whatever the javascript code is there, you can go ahead and put that javascript code inside the js dot inside the calci.js file, okay. So this is your static. And next you need to create a folder called templates. Okay, now you can also create a folder called templates. Inside the templates resides your index.html. So this index.html, right, is your actual html file that contains all your code. And this, what you call it as a Django template code, okay. Django template code will always start with the flower brackets, close brackets, and here you are loading the static files, which are nothing but css and javascript that you see here. Instead of the entire path, we are giving this path css in order to load the css, and at the bottom you can see in order to load the javascript file. This is called the template code, okay. So just at the three locations we are going to change it. That's it, nothing, no changes at all for this, just to include the static files, okay, where you have created the static file, right. The same thing if you want to include it inside the html, which is your template file. Now with that being said, let's go ahead and run this script. And in order to run that, what we need to do, open the browser, open the command line prompt, okay. Now navigate to that location. So what is that location that I have stored this Django project? Cd desktop, then cd code. Inside the code I have created a file folder called Django, and inside the Django there is a virtual environment that has been created, which is nothing but what is the virtual environment that I have created? The environment is my Django code. Yeah. So before that, what we can do is we can go ahead and activate that virtual environment. How do I activate that virtual environment? Just by copying that my Django env backslash scripts backslash activate dot batch. Okay, this will cannot locate. Okay, I have misspelled it. All right, so now I can see my virtual environment is active. Inside this virtual environment, if I go ahead and see what folders exist, these all exist, then I will go and navigate to the virtual environment folder, which is cd Django virtual environment. Then I will see the dir, what it contains. It contains the project called Calci app, okay. This is what the project is. Now what I need to do is I need to navigate to this, okay. Go to this project, which is cd Calci app. Now once I go there, I'll see directory, and in this directory I find the manage.py. Here if I find the manage.py, this is where I am going to run this project. So how am I going to run the project? using manage.py, which is py space manage.py, and then run server, execute. Okay, so this has been executed successfully. I just need to go to this URL, copy this URL, copy, and then I go here and type it, enter. Now it says certain things here. Page not found 404, which is page not found HTTP code it is. Now there are two ways I can navigate, whether it is calci folder or admin folder. So here, once I go here, type calci, CALCY. Even now it is showing me certain error, which is page not found, because I need to navigate to index. Okay, then calci index index, then enter, and this is where you find your project, which is for calci using Django, Python, JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, which is 4 into 4 is 16. Okay, then clear it. 4 into 9 is 36. So this is how you need to execute, guys. So now I will share this code to you, no doubt about it, but at the same time I want you to go ahead and practice this on your go ahead and read these notes, whatever is given here. Okay, try to install Django, create virtual environment, install Django, Python, everything, and copy these whatever the file that I'm going to share with you, the entire virtual network, my Django environment. I'll share this folder. You can copy that folder as well. Just before copying it, I want you to create a virtual environment by the same name. And second, you need to create a project by the same name, and then create a app by the same name. Once you have created all this, then you copy the individual files and replace what is already created. Okay, go ahead and because why that is needed, because it contains a URL file. This urls.py file will point to this index file. Okay, these are the URL patterns that will follow this path. Okay, now this path function has got a certain arguments. The first one is a regex, which is a regular expression. Then there are arguments related to what module it is. Okay, views.index, inside that you're trying to find the index file, and then the name that is given as index. So you need to modify this. Okay, so in how can you modify that? You can just copy this content there, that's enough. And even the view.py, we need to render this index.html file. That is the HTML file we are referring to when you have when you request it. When the request comes to the index file, then this file needs to be fetched or rendered. Okay, so with this changes, you will be able to run your entire calci using Python, Django, and all these required um, frameworks as well as technologies. Are you able to use this whatever has been said for your project details?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so right away, in a matter of time, within an hour or something, I'll share the details, and I want you to go ahead and refer these notes thoroughly and add to your report wherever you are creating a report or anything. Add these details to it. That will help you. And the next thing is, wherever you stop, okay, wherever you stop or anyone is not getting an answer, just ask me to schedule a meeting whenever you want. We will have a quick meeting, and whatever the issues that you come up with, we'll resolve that. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So first thing is, refer to these notes and try to go ahead and install for yourself. And if you find any issues wherever you stop, then together you decide on a time and we'll get on to a call, and then we'll try to resolve and fix the issues what you guys are facing. All right. So kindly refer to those Django notes, read through them, work around with them first before you venture into the project, and then take that project folder and try to replicate that in your scenarios and run that. And if you face any issues, then collect those issues collectively, and then we'll get on to a call and resolve those issues one by one. Thank you guys, and
Yes,
you
sir.
guys have a good night.